Okay, let's look at the state of the present skin color that are on the royal mummies. Um, this will be direct quotes from the Egyptologists that were working on the project and a main head, G.E. Smith. You can see Isis there is always a pale woman, but what caused the skin color of the royal mummies to look black? Misguided Afrocentric racists actually believe that the present state of the mummified Egyptian skin was the same in their life. Ignoring the fact of natural human decomposition, putrefaction, color changes, bloating, dampness, air exposure, oxidation, fungus, or embalming techniques that artificially do change colors over time, and we're talking about a long period of time. So, mummification was an art form which continued to advance and degress throughout the dynasties. Some pre-dynastic mummies were naturally mummified by desert sands at the first, in the pre-Ghibelline and pre-dynastic mummies. So let's look at that. A fine example of a naturally preserved pre-dynastic mummy is ginger. This was centuries before various applications were applied to the deceased, such as pitch and tar, causing artificial discoloration. Let's take a look at ginger here. So, ginger's white skin is still preserved after more than 5,400 years. And you can see that that is a pale Caucasoid. Doesn't even seem to be really tanned. Sure, it's stained and bled out through the time in the sands, but also something I noted in one of my other videos. Here's what looks like African art, but that's not an African right there. You can see all this skin, the color of it, the natural colorization, leucoderm. Look at that bowl behind him. And then tellingly, here's these black-tipped bowls that are Sumerian art. They attached that to that together. It's amazing. Also this art style, the double-handled jugs. Notice the sandy, blonde, wavy hair. It's not woolly hair. It almost looks like a Greek statue. In fact, outside of this place, they show you a picture of a Greek statue, which I think is Adonis, and show you it as the example of its curly hair that you should be able to see whenever you're looking around through it on the windows. And again, here's that supposed African art, and where they probably got their art style and the fact of doing pottery from in the first place. Because most of the Africans didn't even develop pottery, and there's a lot of people like the West Africans that still cook things in the ground. But yeah, notice that. Now, some Nakata II, it's about 3500 to 3150 BC, burials at Nekhen contain some resin-coated bodies. 11th dynasty mummies were dried in natron and coated in resin, though. So once you get to that point, there's a step. Now, official descriptions of the mummies when they were unwrapped by the people. Ahmose I. Here's a picture of Ahmose, and of course he's got slender lips. A very Caucasoid looking face in the first place. Lots of nice curly hair here. That's not negroid in any way. And then, of course, the nasal slit is a real giveaway on any skull. And this seems to be extremely small. The noses on all these get extremely messed up. You know, they broke through the back of their nose and they pulled their brains out through there. So they had to cut all this up and stuff that goes all between there and ruin your nasal passages just terribly. So I'm sure that, like doing any operation like that, you would have just been black-eyed out, and it causes so much bruising to do it. But they had done it, and ironically, they threw the brain away because they thought the heart was the locus to the soul. But even the wrapping that are around here, it's a nice linen. I mean, it's not as nice, fine as percale or anything, but it's a nice linen that's been done, fine linens, even at that time here. So the head was broken off. Here's the description. The head was broken off and the nose smashed. There was an abundant layer of resinous paste to the surface of the body. The head and scalp are thickly encrusted with this black material, but not enough to hide the dark brown wavy hair. The nose was small and narrow. The body, like the head, was smeared with thick layer of black paste. This is, again, The Royal Mummies by G. Smith. So this thick black paste that they flaked off, they can see, and it's just dark as hell. It's barely see-through, it, if any at all. Even when you hold it up to the light, it's like trying to look through dark sunglasses that have dirt all over them. So here's Ahmose Sitkamose, right? And then, so you can see that hair there. Well, the whole body, including the face, is thickly smeared with a black resinous paste. She had scantily black wavy hair. The skin of the mummy was white. She had a smashed skull, dislocated jaw, and missing fingers. They made no indication if they thought this was before or after. They didn't have extensive CAT scans. Here's Teta Sherry. So we look at her and her look, and she's got that, I don't know, Granny from the Clampets thing going on. But look at this hair. It's all coming down through here. She's an elder lady, and of course they wore wigs and kept the hair short up under the wig, but the skin is blackened, as in Notritari's mummy, and the face is coated with black, shining, resin-like material. A wig was interplated with the old lady's own scanty hair. The Royal Mummies, G.E. Smith. So she almost had like a weave cut in. Now here's Notritari, Ahmose Notritari. And the skin is blackened like most of the mummies of this period. Fragments of linen that still adhere to the mummy are their dark yellowish and reddish brown colors as the result of being impregnated with a resinous solution, usually found in bandages swathing some 18th dynasty mummies. The Royal Mummies, G. Smith. Now here's here's Hentempet. And she was found holding all these wigs, like her collection of wigs. And if you'll look how that's not quite straight here, it's got a little body curl in it, like the weaves the black girls like to get now to mimic the Caucasian hair that their hair isn't like. This one has some braids mixed in, others are loose. She's wearing one now, or nope, that's her natural hair. Still that long, but up under a wig. Her nose got crushed up, but look how small her little nose is. Let's see what they say about this one. Pressure had been applied to the face when applying the bandages. The nose is completely flattened. The skin is paper-like in consistency and has a pale yellow color, as though it had been painted with ochre. The mummy was found with wigs of wavy brown hair, but the lady's own hair was freely streaked with gray. There was a complete absence of black resinous paste, so she has normal skin color. Amazing. You take some more looks at that. Hentempet. Here's Ahmose Inhapy. Now she's got thin braids. The skin is a dark brown color, soft, moist, and tough like oiled leather. The appearance recalls that of the crudely preserved mummies of the Coptic period. Powdered wood and linen saturated with resin covered the whole body. The Royal Mummies, G. Smith. Tightly bound bandages flattened the nose and left ridges on the face. The wood or paste produced the moist, soft, dark brown skin. And they said on her there was a little bit different of a technique. They even think it may have been like finer than pencil shavings, literally almost ground to a dust. Cedar and like cinnabar and things like that that take it of essence woods that had a smell to them, perhaps, and that she was dusted with it somewhat, and maybe even whenever it was still sticky, and then left like that, like giving her a coating that way on it. But yeah. So it's the resin that causes most of this problem that they roll over them. It's like They're basically painting him with black lacquer. And no wonder they have that appearance. So here's Thutmose. And he's one of the ones that they made that's smiling pretty good. But in here, I think you can tell he's kind of an older man. He's wrinkled a little bit. And you can tell how they screwed his nose totally up, trying to pull his brains out through his nose, but did okay. Smiling, thin lips, non-prognostic jaw. Let's see what it'd say about pulling him out. Enswathed in a resin-impregnated bandages, the skin of the face retains obvious traces of having been much wrinkled during life. The head is devoid of hair. The royal mummies. Now, oxidation of resins in the bandaging caused the mummy to turn black when exposed to the air. They note in a few of these that whenever they start pulling off the bandages, that they actually have a lighter skin, and then it starts to oxidize right off the bat. And it doesn't take long before it's turning darker and darker and just blackening out. There's a few stories from England whenever they were importing mummies up there, where people had got them and had parties and unwrapped the mummies. And they'd unwrap the mummies and they would be lighter skinned, but within a short period of time, they would be darker. People blamed it on fireplaces and moved them and did things, but it didn't have any effect. It seemed like they all just kind of charred out and went away. And so that's the little depiction you always see when they just kind of char out and turn to dust, in the mummy, when you finally kill the mummy or take away the amulet and so on. But let's continue to look at this here. So this resin paste is causing a lot of the problem with people that think that they're black being able to hold on to that idea, but of course things rot. And here's Thutmose II. And what did they say about him? He has curly lock hair. He has white skin, but covered in marks. Mommy's Royale's Maspero wrote, on the temples there is a dark brown wavy hair arranged in curls. The nose must have been moderately broad without being squat. G. Smith. Oxidation of resins on the bandaging caused the mummy to turn black when exposed to the air. He noted that again. So it's almost like it's been so long that once you start pulling it apart, it just starts to disintegrate or go away. That's why they're having so much trouble with preservation on these things. And here's the one that always seemed to have his little smile or just laugh, or he's kind of going, hey, hey, hey. He's got that little look to him and everything. Got a real slender nose, though, off of it, and a non-prognostic jaw. Let's see what they say about him, though. The face was plastered over with pitch. The nose, now badly damaged, was narrow, high-bridged, and prominent, but not large. The mouth is slightly open, and the lower lip is drawn outwards. Well, yeah, he kind of looks like he's kind of like that. I think his mouth just came open. Normally they had it bandaged till it stuck, and perhaps they didn't have it tight there. Here's Thutmose IV, and you can tell it's an elder man with very little hair, almost ladies and gentlemen, the world's first comb over. Right there, he's combing his hair over. Look, he goes from here all the way over there. But you can tell he's pretty much bald on top, and they're doing a comb over on the guy. And you look at this thick jaw and his aquiline looks and his thin lips. And no, so let's see what they say about him, though, whenever they found him. The skin is very dark and discolored, so that it is not possible to form an accurate idea of its original color. The nose is small, straight and narrow and aquiline in shape. The lips are thin. The hair is wavy. Microscopically, the hair was found to be dark brown, studded with masses of dark foreign matter. So it had some treatment put into it that at the time they never tested to see exactly what it was. They could see it on the microscope, and it was just dirty with some type of, maybe that same type of plant dust that they did out of the wood or something like that mixed in with it. So here we're looking at Amenhotep II. Several pieces of resin-soaked linen were seen adhering to the nose and mouth and hiding the features of the face. He has wavy brown hair, sloping forehead, and slender but prominent nose. Wavy, brown. See, some of these have straight hair, some of them have wavy hair. Look how almost straight hair that is. Now, they never figured out who he was. Perhaps he was a prince or one of the unknown royals, but he's known as C. Nebseni. He has an abundant black hair freely streaked with gray. The skin of the body is of a reddish-brown color, but that of the face is almost black. The man had a strong face with pronounced features, a big, heavy, broad jaw of Armenoid type, prominent brow ridges and sloping forehead, broad cheeks, and a fairly prominent nose. The bandages were resin impregnated. Whenever people do this for a living, they easily see facial types. It's a simplistic type of thing. But it's funny how the Negroids can't even recognize themselves or things that aren't themselves, or they just so desperately want it to be themselves, and it's not. Bandages are resin impregnated bandages. And so this resin stuff is getting all over them and causing this problem. It's basically like a black lacquer soot tar paste. Here's one that's known as the Elder Lady, and it's Queen Ty. And there's a lot of discrepancy on this. And everybody says, oh, there's one wood thing that's got her and she's dark. She looks like a bitch, so she has to be black, was kind of disgusting to even hear. But then they say that, look, she's got an afro. And I'm like, well, here she is, and she don't have no afro. In fact, what you thought was an afro is a thin silver veil mesh doily over the top of a pharaoh's helmet. They've done CAT scans and things on it now just to see what it was all composited of course, because they already knew it was a veil and not an afro. But if you want to darken a picture down and say it, and, oh, by the way, that's been out and very public for over 35 years now, and people are still trying to pull that shit. Anyhow, look at this long curly hair. Look at this. Yeah, try to tell me that she's a Negroid. Right. She has long, brown, wavy, lustrous hair, small, pointed features. She had a salt bath. Note the white skin is still observed in patches on her body. Younger lady, supposedly Nefertiti, and her jaw's messed up. I don't know if anybody's looked at that. The technique of embalming displayed in this mummy and other two, Ty and Obexnu, associated with it is precisely similar to that of Amenhotep, resin-soaked linen. Because they'd done an extensive on Amenhotep, and they would refer to similar things like that. Here's Yuya. And Yuya to me always somehow looked like Abraham Lincoln out of nowhere. And he's got all this curly locks, like Greek kind of hair. And, man, he just kind of looks like Lincoln. And then you find out they got color pictures of it now. When they have color pictures of it, he's got blonde hair. He's got blonde hair. Now, they say he's old enough that it should have been grayed out pretty bad. So, he says the outer layers were covered in a layer of black resin paste. Yuya had white hair, now stained yellow by the embalming process. Face of the Pharaohs by R.B. Partridge, who did the exhumation. The thing about that is, not too long after him, people tried to put different people's hairstyles all through the embalming process and natron and everything, and they couldn't get it to turn yellow. So the embalming process used of resin, which also turned his face a reddish-brown color. The rest of the body became blackened. The bandage had not been carbonized like that of King Tut. So King Tut had what they were literally, his bandage had turned almost carbonized. They felt like he got moisture to him, and it almost caused a slight spontaneous combustion. Here's Tutankhamun. And you can just see right here the thickness of that paste that's on him because it's cracking. I mean, it's literally like, thick. It's not a dusting of makeup. The stuff they're putting on is thick. It's got his mouth all glued together. I mean, there's a large amount of it on him, and especially around his face. Seems like he has 3 or 4 coats on his face and only 2 on the top. Whenever the flicks come off on top, what color is that skin under there? What color is that skin right there? The flicks coming off of that? Okay, let's look at this here. Let's see what they say. The skin of the mummy is a gray-white color. It's very brittle and cracked. The liquids poured all over the body cause carbonization of the soft tissue by means of a kind of spontaneous combustion that, due to the heat and humidity, went in the coffins. The mummy had been allowed to deteriorate over the last 70 years. One obvious example of the deterioration is that the body is now much darker in color than when it was first revealed. Pressure from the bandages has partly flattened some of the soft tissues of the nose. Faces of the Pharaoh, R.B. Partridge. So they definitely noted the fact that they didn't even used to be this black. Word. That's King Tut himself, which now they've done the DNA on, and he seems to show out European. Isn't that amazing? 50% of Europeans have him. And here's Seti. Now, Seti is related to Seth. And the Sethite version of all the pharaohs are usually known to have red hair or auburn hair, right? And look at his face. I mean, it's the one that's really, they say, is the most alkaline out of all of them. And he really has this regal, nice-looking face. At present, the whole surface of the body, excepting the head only, is covered with a black mass of bandage impregnated with resinous material. All the exposed areas of the skin, including the face, are quite black. When the head was first exposed, the skin was distinctly brown and not black. So every time they open these up, it oxidizes because they're kind of protected, kind of hermetically sealed. And they were sealed long enough for us to have a technology that we could do something about it. Now here's the great Ramses II. And, Sheikh Diop has said that he was black, and they've run a bunch of studies on him and totally debunked that. I've got a video on that that's just been put out. But look at his lighter skin. They tell you this mummy reveals a distinct advantage in the technique of the embalmer's art. For the first time, it became possible to reverve the skin without the dark brown or black discoloration that occurred invariably in earlier attempts at mummification. So here's kind of a peek of it whenever they had done things right or ran it through, and kind of got the same effect as the Ghibelline mummies. Sure, it has some darkening on it, but not an incredible amount like you would see. And here's Twosret. And you can see that she's got curly hair, and it actually has been affixed. In other words, they used to take a warm rod and wrap the hair around it and hold it till it cools off a little bit and slide the rod out and make curls in their hair. A few depictions of them curling these girls' hair and doing some things, and a description of it in a medical journal type thing that they had. But her face has been squished and pushed up, and her neck's almost dislocated. How tight they put her stuff on. Squished her ears to her head. I mean, quite a bit. The texture of the tissues and the light color of the skin and the absence of any of the discoloration. She had prominent, narrow, high-bridged rameside nose, but the pressure of the bandages had distorted the cartilaginous part. The packing of the mouth was giving the lips a pouting expression and further disturbed the natural profile of the face. Well, she's kind of squished down, but there's the absence of any discoloration. So she was lighter whenever they first pulled her out, and she darkened over time. The color of the mummy's skin had changed from a light brown to a dark brown after 24 hours. Within a few days, the skin was almost black. Mummies, disease, and ancient cultures. This is when they were pulling mummies out and seeing them, and then they're working on another one, and then they'd go and look at the other one, and they go, look, it's turning black. That quick, it was just oxidizing out from being exposed finally after the years. The dried tissues of mummies, in fact, are often black, possibly as a result of the blackening of the resins which the body sometimes was coated. Ancient Egyptian Materials and Industries. That was written by Lucas and Harris. In 1994, an Egyptologist, Bob Breyer, replicated the mummification process on a white, pale male. The process turned the white skin dark brown without even being covered by resins that discolored, and waiting for 4,000 or 5,000 years and then unwrapping him real quick and watching it oxidize. Let's take a look at this. There's a couple of pictures of it. Here he is. After the treatment, there's his legs, and he has turned a dark brown already just after the treatment. Not even been wrapped, not had anything done to him. It's quite obvious the mummies became blackened due to the resins and pitch applied to their skin. Further, they couldn't become black if they were already black. Afrocentrics, the gig is up. Your excuses only establish you as liars. This has been debunked, and about 70% of what you are attempting to say in the last 5 years has been debunked 30 years ago. And you keep getting told the same information, and yet you keep saying the same thing over again and again, like it's brand new every time you say it. Like, share, and subscribe. And if you don't like it, I'm sorry. Here's the truth. Peace.